else? No one? Sure, you've all sat through the meeting, so now's your chance. Okay, no one wants to add anything. I'll close the public portion. And board members, you've heard what the residents of Old Orchard Lane have to say, and do you have comments? Yes, David?
Well, I would like to ask either Derek or Lee to comment on Mr. Peters' quote of the ordinance requiring a 50-foot buffer between residential and non-residential use. What is that in fact in the ordinance, number one, and number two, what would be the definition of the buffer? In other words, could parking be within that buffer, or is it just a building that can't be within that buffer zone?
Well, and I'll just add to that question, how wide is the current, I thought it was the landscape buffer, it required a 50, right, so how wide is the current buffer that's planned?
Could I ask a question while they're looking that up? I'm assuming that this is a gas generator, and we're beginning to see more of these generators installed. They self-test once a week, once every 2 weeks or something, in a very annoying manner, especially the large ones for office buildings. And I'm wondering if you really thought about adequate screening for this size generator that you're putting in. Do you have them at the other buildings at this point?
No, but the generators must comply, and just bear in mind it's only for emergency use. This is not for normal.
Well, they do self-test, though.
Well, I understand, and the self-test is actually something that you can decide how frequently you test them. I mean, I have one at my home. It goes on for 20 minutes every week.
Yes, and so does mine, and so do all my neighbors. It's quite noisy.
Right, but the generator, the noise that's emitted from the generator does and will comply with the ordinance of whatever the decibel level of the ordinance. And as far as, we're going to have, I believe, a masonry enclosure, so I think it's, and its location, I don't really think that the testing of the generator or the operation of the generator is really going to have much of an impact, particularly on the Old Orchard. It might be up at your Princeton house or our building, but Princeton house has two large generators that occasionally...
They're noisy. Yep. Yes.
To follow up on that, I am assuming, and tell me I'm correct, that you can dictate the time because they are noisy, and if they go off at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have a lot of people angry. So can you determine the
yes,
time of the
you
testing?
can program them to go on anytime you want.
Okay, how is the research going over there?
We're looking because we're wondering, we don't recall it being applied before in that instance, and it's a little confusing.
Okay.
Can we talk about the four-sided sidewalk versus the two-sided sidewalk
Yes, I
now?
think that would be very productive. Okay, the question was, how does the board feel about the sidewalk on all four sides of the building versus the one that's proposed on just two sides? Anyone? Yes. Ms. Ullman?
I guess as I see the issue as put by Brian and the staff, it's a matter of safety to have sidewalks on all sides, even though there are relatively few parking places. The aesthetics of a green hedge and the worry about walking past the windows seems to me to have a lower priority than safety. So I guess I would go along with staff and our consultant in asking the applicant to do sidewalks on all sides.
David?
And I agree with Ms. Altman about that, and I believe the applicants agreed to put the additional sidewalks in the various PowerPoint slides. That was one of the points.
Actually, no, we were
No,
agreeing with SPRAB.
SPRAB didn't put them in. So.
Well, I thought I saw a slide that said we were going to do it.
That's why we're discussing this question.
Right. I mean, we've agreed to include a sidewalk that staff had recommended from Herrontown Road to the building. We did have a lot of internal discussions about whether it made sense to have the sidewalk on all four sides of the building or not. But as a practical matter, there are many locations within the parking lot that essentially you're going to be walking across the parking lot to get to the entrance, front or rear entrance of the building, and may or may not ever get onto a sidewalk as you go toward the building. So I think we felt that, and SPRAB felt that there was an opportunity here to have a little bit more green space around the buildings, and also there's a little bit more privacy. I mean, the honest truth is that, I mean, if the board felt strongly about it, that's fine. I mean, it's not a deal breaker. I just think that the buildings at Herrontown now, for the most part, don't have sidewalk. There's not, there's parking toward the building, but there's not sidewalks in front of it. People get out of their cars, they walk through the parking lot, and then they get on the last bit of sidewalk or pathway to the entrances of the building.
Well, I'll just preface this by saying I don't feel extremely strongly about this, but I'm just trying to visualize how I use the parking lot. I mean, I use this parking lot here every day, and I know there's a sidewalk, and it's not direct because it's on the other side. It would be walking further away from the building to use that sidewalk, but in all the parking lots, this parking lot, the one at the shopping center, normally we're used to walking across a parking lot and not hopping directly on a sidewalk. And, if it lends to less impervious surface, I guess I would prefer, I think, the two sides, although again, I'm not going to, if the board feels strongly the other way, I'm not going to stand in the way.
Yes. Jenny?
Yeah, I agree with what Liz just said. The logic has convinced me that walking across 5 spaces, most of the other spaces in the parking lot that aren't adjacent to the building, you have to walk that much. And I feel like it's kind of their choice if they want their people that are parking in their building to walk across the parking lot.
Yeah. I don't know, I tend to like sidewalks simply because they get shoveled in the winter. So, if it's a choice between walking through the slush in the parking lot and walking on a shoveled sidewalk, then I vote for more sidewalks. But, David?
I mean, I'm going to, again, I think we're breaking down a little bit along age lines, and I'm falling. I'm aligning myself with Gail instead of with Liz and Jenny here.
We're the same age, David.
No. Anyway, the point that I want to make is that I am used to walking through parking lots, but I am finding as I get older, it's more and more difficult to maneuver my car in parking lots where the pedestrians are walking through the parking lot. So if you think about when you're going to McCaffrey's and you're trying to back out of your parking space, and there's lots of people walking to their cars through the parking area, it's quite nerve-wracking, and I think that there is a safety issue that would be improved by having these sidewalks on the two sides of the building where they're not present currently.
Well, the other thing is that we've heard that there are going to be peak periods in this parking lot as opposed to the McCaffrey's lot, which spreads the time people come and go in the slots out so that everyone will be walking to his or her car at the same time that everyone is backing out, so.
And it's also only, the worst case is, I think, is there 10 spots along the side? So the worst case is you're walking across 4 cars. So it's not like McCaffrey's where there's a big long line. So the chances of those 4 cars, people coming out while you're parking, I think are pretty small, probably.
They all leave work at the same time.
I mean, I think other people should weigh in too, because it's like 2 people,
Julie.
2 against 2.
Julie Capizoli. I just want to respect SPRAB because I know that they did spend, I'm sure they spent a long time going back and forth on this as well, and I just feel like the green space, any kind of planting near the building is going to be a lot more attractive than just concrete all the way around. And people just go directly toward the entrance. They don't use sidewalks because they take the fastest route possible. So I just don't think anyone's going to use the sidewalk.
Okay, well, maybe we need a straw vote on this one. How many of you?
Well, let me just ask a question first, if I may. I was under the impression that while the applicant would not be opposed to building the sidewalk, particularly if it's going to make or break the deal, I come down on the side of safety always, but equally important to me is whether or not it's going to be used. That's the side I come on. And in my mind, I'm thinking I'm not going to park a car and get out of it and walk in front of that car to walk down a sidewalk to get to the building. I'm going to get out of my car and use the shortest route I can to get to the door of that building.
That's because you're young at heart.
Okay, so where does that leave us, number-wise? Okay, all of those in favor of the extra sidewalk? 1, 2, 3, 8 is 4. So, and those opposed? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think.
Stop holding up 2 hands.
Yeah, those are. It sounds like the SPRAB point of view has won out. So, okay, do we have a?
After reviewing the ordinance, I think that that ordinance does apply with the buffer zone, 50 feet. I'm not sure why we missed it, but upon further inspection, it does look like it applies. The board has the ability to reduce that with screening or fences or if they're present.
Okay, the board has the ability to reduce it from 50 feet with
Where a
landscape.
natural buffer strip is deemed impractical or inappropriate by the planning board, a suitable screening wall or fence may be substituted as approved by the